Nap, power nap. Power naps are important. Ego a size of a vanity, a little bit of teacher gossip. That's a very vague question. I like how you're throwing in foreshadow there. You get Diwali break, you get summer break, take the time to read. I like noodles, curries, yeah. I think I would go for Othello for the plot. Devansh, you just figured that one out, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm not a good English student, Hamas, please. If you're ready for that. You can come. It doesn't work. I just want to tell you that it's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
We'd like to tell you one thing, that this is for students to get to know you better. If you want to share anything personal, you can go ahead. And if any of the questions, if you find them to be personal, you can just say skip. Okay? We're going to go to the next one.
Alright.
You can sit here. You ready? Okay. So,
Hello, miss.
hello, miss. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Outside the Classroom. Today, we have the honor of hosting Miss Chandani Bathija, who's an English teacher in our school, and we've known her for a very long time. So, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, I've just told you right now that you can say skip for any question that you feel is personal. That's a rule that we have in our podcast. Okay, and we'll start with our first question. Then we have 4 segments. If you want to introduce the segments a bit.
Okay, so the first segment is basically your area of focus, which is something about subject you're teaching, how you got into English which you're teaching. Then the second section is basically things you do outside of the classroom, things you do apart from school and your life outside of school.
Yeah.
Then something we have is like a quick fire section, is basically your likes or dislikes about simple things like a movie, a book, or something you like. Then following that, we have some memorable moments in your life, something which you really recall, or something you really remember in your life. And then we have some a debatable questions which you can put forward your views on, about maybe AI use in classrooms or something about that.
Yes.
And then the last one is like school oriented, about some maybe like tips about IOs,
Yeah.
etc. So yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the first question, miss, which is basically your life in school. So, what was your journey to teaching language and literature like? How did you get into this subject?
This question goes beyond my life in school because I can tell you how I started teaching versus how I got into the subject, because for me, it was more about being a teacher versus which subject I'll teach. I think once I decided that I have switched my profession. Essentially, I have done my master's in clinical neuroscience from King's College London. When I came back here, I decided to take a small break and work with an NGO, actually volunteer as a teacher at Akansha Foundation. And while I was teaching there as a part-time volunteer, I was looking for a job, thinking what to do, because professionally I had become a clinical researcher, but I found myself not inclined enough as compared to when I was teaching at Akansha. So that's how I started teaching, and once I got in, I realized that it's always been English for me, because I've been a good reader, avid reader. I enjoy reading, and that's I think one of the questions you've listed down also is, what do you enjoy doing in terms of your pastime or free time at home? And I think that reading is a relaxation tool for me, and I've always been not during my school days. I used to not read when I was at school. That's a bad example to set, but much later when I was in university, I started reading, and I think it naturally came to me to be an English teacher.
That's nice. It's very cool how you had that neuroscience degree and all of that. So that's.
Yeah, so now you told us about how you got into English and how you start teaching as English. So what's your daily day in school as you come in, and how's your day?
What
like?
does it look like for Miss Chandni?
Yeah.
A particular day in school. Yeah.
What does it look like? It starts with my breakfast. In school. So it starts with my breakfast at 7:30. Yes, and check in with colleagues, and I think the day is usually packed with a bunch of things that you unexpect, right? It usually you you have this planner in mind and the day takes you somewhere else because you have so many things cropping up during the day. So it's really hard to tell you what my day looks like. But essentially, I can tell you how it starts and it ends. Starts with my breakfast and ends with like quick catch up with colleagues, sitting together towards the end of the day, talking about our day, a little bit of teacher gossip, a little bit of what's happening with the students, what's happening in different English classes. So a little bit around that.
That's nice. What's your favorite thing about OIS, miss?
Favorite thing is actually very easy to say. It's the students. I think that it's the students and the culture of OIS that makes it a place that you feel like coming back to. I have been at the school for not so long, but this is my 7th year, and I feel like it's the culture of the school that makes it feel like home. And I think the students at OIS are quite, I would like to say, quite grounded. And very welcoming, very warm as well. And I think teachers develop, and I've observed this in all departments, teachers develop a good rapport with all students very quickly. So I think there's a student and teacher bond or relation that develops organically right at the outset, at the beginning of the year. And that's what makes it a second home, because we spend so much time at school, right? We come in as teachers at almost 7:15 and we leave at 4:15. So we spend a considerable amount of our day at school.
Yeah. So the student-teacher bond, it must be very different in the past, right? The way my parents have explained it, the student-teacher bond was not that great. You get scales hit on your hand and all of that. So can you talk more about that? What do you think are the differences?
I think the difference is, yes, you're right, the generational gap over the years. And I feel like more and more it's important for teachers to become students' friends, essentially become more like friends, and essentially have empathy, because the days you're talking about, I'm not saying that teachers didn't have empathy, but those are archaic ways of correcting behavior, of dealing and teaching, right? Over time, over the years, we've evolved so much. Our teaching practices have evolved and educational practices have evolved. So I think that while at heart the teachers have a common goal, the approaches have changed over time. Yeah.
So would you say that any of your teachers which you had when you were younger, probably our age, like inspired you to, or maybe taught you to become a teacher, or like, foreshadowed how your teaching?
I like how you're throwing in foreshadow there.
It's the PG7 miss. You need
Yeah, foreshadowed your teaching style which you have with students right now.
Unfortunately, no, because I think when we are at school, the most common misconception is, oh, I don't want to become a teacher. That's the last thing you think of when you are at school, right? And it's often looked down upon, right? I think that a teacher takes on this profession only if a teacher is truly passionate about teaching, about being with students, about learning from students, and having this sort of relationship which is so pure in that sense. So I think you only have to be passionate to be able to identify a true calling. So at the time when I was in school, there was no way that I wanted, because I was, to be very honest, I was a very sincere student, but I was very hardworking as well. But I was not one of the toppers at school. Like, I was in the above average level. So yes, thinking about studying at the time and teaching at the time was a daunting experience for me.
Ever pressurized to become a topper in school by anyone? Like, never, right?
Anyone, you mean?
Like, maybe parents, teachers, you were never pressurized. Study, you have to come first and all of that.
No, I think the times were different at the time, Parents were, I feel like my parents at the time were more chilled out, more relaxed. There was less pressure as well. The level of competition was even lower in comparison to now. Even if you get, at the time, even if you landed up getting a 70s or a 80 percentage, I'm talking about, we didn't have the grade system. I was from an SSC school. We didn't have the grade system then. So even if you got 70s or 80s, you've like done really well, versus now in ICSE, even 90% is looked down upon, right? Because you need a 95% more. So
Like right now, probably like a lot of students are applying for their courses in college and deciding what profession they want to do. So I wanted to ask you, maybe you chose a profession and you chose not to go forward with it. So how did you make that choice, and how did you make the choice of switching your profession?
Did
Was
you get
that
a
like a
different
hard
calling
decision
or
to make?
something like that?
It was not a different calling, it was a trial and error for me. I got into what seemed like, often I feel like I'm cutting myself, but I remember being so overwhelmed or rather influenced by people around me, by teachers, by peers around me as well, by parents. And I didn't exactly know at the time what is it that I want to do, because it's your parents who want you to do something versus your friends are doing something and your teachers are telling you you should do this. It's all different. So I think for me it was more trial and error. I heard out a few people, tried a few pathways, and I realized it's not working out for me. And I had the support to make changes. Like my family at the time were very supportive and allowed me to make changes. Even though I had finished a master's in clinical neuroscience and completely switched my profession. So when I started teaching, I started from scratch again.
Was it scary to start over? Like I think a lot of students find it very scary to change subjects and
Yeah,
they just
they do,
start
yes.
over from maybe a different subject, even though they're in 12th right now. So was it
I think it's really scary and a daunting experience at the time to be able to make that call to switch. But if you have the support, right? If you have your family and your parents, teachers, people around you supporting you, because it's very easy for people to criticize and say, hey, or demean you or belittle you for your change in the decision that you've made. I think that what's really important is the kind of support that you get from people around you that makes it easy. In the long scheme of things, you look back and say, oh, that was, didn't really matter so much,
Yes, MS, so if not language and literature, which subject would you have thought? I'm guessing probably like psychology or something.
Yes.
Okay,
Why did you guess that? Let me ask you that.
student was
No, but there has to be something. that you must
neuroscience. I was guessing probably something.
Huh.
Really.
Yeah. So I have done my psychology, bachelor's in psychology. So yes, clinical neuroscience in that sense is kind of related in some ways or the other. I would have thought, actually when I joined OIS, I had thought of teaching English and psychology, but I'm happy with English as of now. Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to the next segment.
I have to say before you start, edit this. This is the maximum I've heard of Abir in this session.
He was really excited to interview you actually.
Yeah, I am sure, but he's not very expressive. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's move on to our next segment, which is outside the classroom. It's our main segment. This is where we start to get to know the teacher a bit more. So, Miss, what does a day in your life look like outside the classroom?
I go back, take a quick nap, power nap. Power naps are important for me because it works incredibly for me, because I am someone who goes home and works out in the evening. I like to have a proper routine in the evening and I know exactly what I'm doing. So I take a quick nap so that I feel energized for my workout, and I'll end up doing like 1.5 2 hours of workout. So that takes most of my time actually, because by the time you finish your workout, it's time to dinner time, and then you start packing for school next day and the day is over.
So would you prefer not to do like schoolwork once you're back home? You prefer to put your attention to other stuff?
This is a question you ask any teacher. They will say yes, of course we prefer not to do schoolwork.
Workload must be so much for teachers.
Yes.
They have no choice.
Yes, there are good days and bad days. When there are bad days, you just have to hang in there, I would say. But there are good days as well. So while we all like to complain and whine about how much workload there is, there's also a sufficient amount of time to recuperate and lead sort of a balanced life as well.
Makes sense. Yes, definitely. Do you have any tips on organization?
Organization. I don't know whether I'm the right person, because I like to organize my day apart from school to the T, in the sense that if I have to go out with friends, I'd like to know a day in advance so I can plan my evening that way. So in that sense, I'm quite organized. I'm not a last minute person, and last minute plans kind of require me to do a lot of mental work, that way.
Yeah, Miss, we asked you just, I think 1 hour before the podcast last Friday, we asked you if we can do it, and you were like, no.
So, in that sense, I think a lot of a routine schedule is important to me, and following that is important to me.
Okay, Miss, you mentioned that having tough days outside of school. So what do you do in a week where you had a tough week and then you have free time? You maybe have like a day holiday of Monday or Friday. So
My first go-to thing is nap, sleep. I love sleeping. My siestas, the afternoon naps are Saturday, Sunday without a miss. I would like to sleep and of course catch up on schoolwork. But I think one way for me to unwind is to take a nap. It's also a way to disconnect from school. I think napping helps me do that, to disconnect from all the workload, all the pressure happening at school. Another way I think would be workout, to kind of or to jog on that regular basis to kind of channel my mental energy, and it gives me a platform to a space to think when I'm jogging, working out, and I spend a lot of time with my husband. So these are the few things I do are a part of my daily routine.
So how do you balance professional responsibilities with personal life? Because we don't really have professional responsibilities as of now, but once maybe in the future we will. So how do you do it?
I'm not really good at that. So I don't know how will I answer that question. I'm pretty bad at balancing. I think that when I start working, I go into this rabbit hole where I don't know where the end is. So it takes up a lot of my it takes up a lot of my personal life as well. So I am trying to find different ways and strategies to work around that. What I've started doing nowadays is that I'll spend a Saturday on working, catching up on all the things I need to do with regards to schoolwork, and Sunday I devote to myself and going out, doing things, all of those things, personal life. But of course that's not possible all the time. Sometimes you have more work, or sometimes you don't have work. So it's really the summative time, the grading period is when there's high pressure for students and for teachers. So sometimes it takes up all your personal space.
Miss, I want to ask you, like you mentioned you're a teacher now, but do you have any personal goals or aspirations that you are working towards right now as we speak, or
You can
something you're aiming for in the future?
only if you feel like comfortable to share. Otherwise, okay.
Honestly, that's a deep question that I don't think I've thought about in terms of personal goals apart from being a teacher, or apart from my professional life. That's a really deep question. So I don't think I have an answer to that. Yeah.
Maybe the next time you're on the podcast, we can. Yeah. Miss, how do you? So okay, we've already discussed this, but any tips for organization for students? Maybe any tips you have, any method you've seen?
Tips for students, I think, call it cliche, but I would say ATL skills, going back to your self-management skills, ensuring that you are organizing your day well, your homeworks well, your submissions that are due, prioritizing, creating a schedule. I think all the things that you've heard so much about, also MYP, I think just sticking to that and ensuring that you do regular practice and devote enough time for each subject versus cramming everything towards the end, right? For example, your EE and your personal project submissions that you had earlier, right? Ensuring you work periodically or rather regularly for your EE submissions rather than looking at it towards the end and pulling an out.
All-nighter. That's something that we all are doing. Like back then, did you all have to pull out all-nighters for work to complete work?
I was in college, yes, but not when I was in school.
No,
There was no concept of all-nighter.
Yeah, half of the students are sleep deprived because we actually have to do these all-nighters to finish work. So like TOK, CAS and E, these are three major things in IB, major requirements. So do you agree with this IB system? Do you think that these requirements should be there, or should it just be like a normal ICSE board where you just have to do that ratta and just go up here for the exam?
That's actually a question for you to answer. What do you think? I mean, you know the pros and cons of ICSE. I don't need to tell you how ICSE runs, right? We know we're living in a society where IB is in minority. IB schools are in minority, right? You have friends outside of school who are in ICSE, IGCSE schools. What do you think?
I can say personally, I was in ICSE, and for IB there was like a more holistic environment to develop as a student rather than just going home, remembering stuff, going to school, writing it down.
He's the right alumni for the secret.
And at the end of the day, if I have to look back what I learned in school, how much do I even remember, right? What I do remember is the relationships I built, the skills I developed, right? In terms of, you talk about social skills, interpersonal skills, right? All of those skills, right? In the end, it's a holistic development that you look at, not just how much information you've crammed and have the ability to vomit out in a summative.
That's right.
I wanted to ask your opinion on competition, which is currently prevalent in school and for universities as well, because students are obviously competing against each other to get that one place for university, or to apply that for that one course in university which they want to go to. So what's your take on all that? About the competition which is there right now, and do you support this competition, or is it something that you frown upon?
In this competition, people sometimes torture themselves to just study all night and all of that. Do you think that's needed, like just to compete?
I think any sort of competition in the society that we live in, whether be it for teachers, for students, in personal, professional life, I feel like there needs to be a balance of everything. You need to be sure of your or have a strong sense of self-efficacy. By that I mean that you need to know yourself really well, have faith in your abilities, right? There's this a constant pressure of comparing yourself with others, and that's where competition comes in, right? If you're able to eliminate all of these things and have a clear focus, and this is what you are going to do, what you're good at, and you're able to reflect on your strengths and weaknesses and not be so bothered about what people are talking about you. I think that competition will be good. But if you are doing what you're doing just for the sake of for the sake of trying to fit in a box that people have created for you, then it's definitely going to be harmful for you and for people around you. So to answer your question, with regards to the university that you apply, right? I mean, it needs to be realistically achievable for you, right? Within your, within your domain, within your area of expertise, right? Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for this segment. We're going to move on to the next one, which would help students and whoever's watching it know you much better. So we're moving on to likes and dislikes. And we start off with your favorite movie.
Favorite movie? I don't have a favorite movie.
Something your comfort movie, something you like to go watch again and again.
I am watching something of late which has become my favorite. Don't know whether you're familiar with the series, Mr. Monk. It's pretty old. It's, I think, released in 2009. It's about this investigator. I like such series. It's really, basically I like humor. Anything that has an element of humor or comedy, I feel like that's relaxing. So Mr. Monk is one of those. I think I was introduced to this series by another teacher, and it goes on for 8 seasons. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Have you watched Friends?
I have, of course. I should be asking you, have you watched Friends? It's my time.
Friends is that kind of series that everyone can watch and laugh. It's that great.
It's not really. Friends has an age limit. You know that.
It does?
A lot of adult content there.
Oops. I don't think age limit is followed in this generation.
Would you recommend the series for students?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's a light-hearted, fun series.
Where can we watch this?
Netflix.
Perfect.
Miss, what about your favorite book? We know you're an English teacher, so any books you would recommend, or what's your favorite book personally?
Favorite book? I don't go by favorites, but I have recently read this actually a while back, but that's a book that I would reread again. Is Half of a Yellow Sun by Adichie. By Adichie. It's a historical fiction. It's a historical fiction. Don't ask me what it's about. Check it out.
Okay. Miss, you don't go by favorites, so I'm gonna say, what's your preferred food?
Preferred food is Asian.
Asian
Yeah,
food.
I like Thai food.
What's your favorite dish?
Favorite dish, I think I would go for, I like noodles, curries, yeah.
So
Asian food, yeah.
Miss, what about a favorite travel destination, a place you've already been to or you want to go to in the future?
I think I can keep going back to London. Yeah, yeah. I think maybe because I've lived there for 2 years. Because I told you I did my master's there. I feel like that's a place I can go back to. There's so many nooks and corners of London that you can explore, and the more you go, the more you find about its beauty, right?
The beauty also lies in its air and the greenery over there. It's so much better.
Yeah. Outskirts of London.
Outskirts of London, yeah, and the parks there. It's really pretty, miss. Yes.
Miss, what about any favorite snacks you like?
Snack. Interesting. I'm not a snack person in that sense. I don't eat charts and stuff, clearly, I mean, but I think healthy snacks, to say, don't know whether you want to know, but chillas and stuff I eat.
Moong dal and besan and all of that. Yes. Miss, do you go to cafes to work? Does it work for you? Like going to cafes and studying is for us?
No, I never understood that. How people go to cafes and work or read or study. I never understood that. If I'm going to a cafe, I'd like to go with a friend. And is that? I like to go with a friend or with someone and go and hang out and chat. I can't just go by myself. Then I'd rather be at home.
Yeah.
And lock myself in the room, be comfortable, wear what I want, and just be on my bed. And
Cafe or restaurant?
favorite cafe, I think there's so many I live in Bandra, and there's so many in Bandra that it's hard to pinpoint one. But my all-time favorite is Bougie Cafe.
Jesus, so
Yeah.
nice. They've got multiple actually.
Yeah, they've got
To
my.
Subco and all that.
Yeah, I have been to Subco. It's beautiful. Yeah,
Okay, so let's move on to the next
That's all we
segment.
have.
That's all we have for the likes and dislikes.
that's great. We do have 10 minutes.
10 minutes. This is a new segment we have. It's
Memorable moments in your life. So it's basically you taking down a trip in memory lane and telling us, something
About-
you remember.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start this with something you remember from your teaching career, maybe teaching at OIS.
of your teaching career.
A memorable moment. It's so hard to say one memorable moment.
Something that's happened, it's always there that you can tell the story again and again to anyone.
Yeah. Yes, I can tell you a couple actually that come to mind very recently. My response is going to be very English centered because very recently we in our class we were talking about the meaning of vanity. This was a grade 10 class. And we were talking about the meaning of vanity. And in my grade 10 class, I mean, these small things make it memorable. So in my grade 10 class, the student said, vanity means a van.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's how it became memorable because we all had a laugh on it because essentially we were talking about how egotistical a person can be and vanity doesn't mean a van. A person who's vain can have a ego a size of a vanity, but vanity means to be self-obsessed. They want you just figured that one out, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm not a good English student, Hamas, please.
What I'm trying to get at is such moments like these make it interesting in class and we're able to have a good laugh. Yeah.
One memorable moment from your school trip, You've been on multiple field trips, I'm sure, in these 7 years of teaching. Any one memorable school trip?
Yes, the first one I went with the 2023 batch or 22 batch, one of them. I'm forgetting we went to Rishikesh, and so this was my first trip actually, and this was a time when all the teachers came together and put up a spoof for the students, and the idea was to mimic the manner in which the students behaved during the trip. So we mimicked couples who found their love in during the trip, and couples who broke up during the trip. So it was quite fun. It was, I think, about 8 to 10 teachers who got together and created a spoof of different moments, trying to mimic the students during in the trip.
It was nice.
It did.
Students laugh a lot.
It did. It
Did
did
they
turn
know
out.
who you were mimicking?
It was very. It was a yes. It was a Shubh batch. If you know Shubh Mukherjee.
Shubh Mukherjee,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
What's the memorable moment from your vacation? Any vacation you had?
Memorable moment. Recent vacation. Memorable moment would be in just sitting by the canals and just
Is that the way you calm down? Is
yeah.
that the way you
I think
find
just
peace?
in nature, just sitting by the canals and just chilling.
So we're short on time, we just make it quick. We'll move on to debatable questions. So we want to know your take on current issues in the world. So firstly, what are your thoughts on the current education system? What do you better or worse than the past?
That's a very vague question.
If you compare it to the past, how do you think like students learning on laptops, the use of technology, all of that, how is it better?
I mean, definitely it's better. It has its pros and cons in terms of technology use, but it's definitely for the better. I am not a champion for the competition or the sense of competitiveness that has built around students and the peer pressure. But in terms, if you're commenting on education system, we're definitely progressing. There's an evolution. We're seeing how students are becoming 21st century, yeah, Gen Z. So definitely pros, yeah.
Miss, what are your thoughts about AI, which I mentioned? So, what are your thoughts about use of AI in classrooms?
I think, yeah, I think it's absolutely okay depending on the age group, as long as we are using AI ethically. There should be no problem, because AI is a tool that we can't escape. It gets better and better every year, right? So we need to learn as people in the society. We need to learn our way around how to use AI, and if we don't, then we are just not going to be ahead of the game, right? So
Yes. Technology is developing. We also have to start becoming tech savvy, because it's only for the better sometimes. So yes. Okay, what are your thoughts on standardized testing and their connection to the school curriculum?
interesting. I think it has its merits and demerits. It really depends on the context, but standardized testing is to a certain level important in providing it's essentially evaluative in nature, right? It gives you a glimpse or an understanding of students' abilities and their readiness levels. So how you use standardized testing is important. Are you using it as one-off, or are you using the various pieces that you have in terms of the data that you have in order to create a whole story? You know what I'm trying to say is that you don't use standardized testing in isolation. When you use it in a given context, you can really enhance the impact of the standard.
Should that only be the criteria to test students, to get to know how much they know?
Of course not. So that's what I mean. It can't be used as one-off. It can't be used as the only criteria, right? That's why we are in an IB school and we look at formative assessments. We are looking at continuous growth, development of the students' learning, right? So yeah.
Like students are having, sometimes when students have a bad summative, sometimes they go into anxiety. Some people are very sad, crying. Any tips for them, for students who have a bad summative assessment? What tip would you give them to just get back to their studies and
I mean, tip would be learn from your mistakes. Understand. I think majority of the students look at the grade when they get their summative and forget the feedback. Versus in the formative, you will look at the feedback, because that's the only thing you get. If the formative is replaced, the feedback is replaced with a grade, students will stop looking at the formative feedback as well. Same applies for, I think, summative. I think that it's important for students to reflect on the summative feedback that teachers give in depth and break it down for the students, so that they understand areas of growth and how to go from there in order to achieve whatever it is that they've charted out for them.
Miss, so follow up on that. Do you think grades matter when you're deciding what to do in life and how successful you're going to be in life?
It's a very subjective question. Grades matter to a certain extent, but it's not the only. You can't be defined by the grade you get, right? You are much more than the grade. Your identity is much more, as in who you are in terms of your likes, dislikes, your strengths, weaknesses. All of those are much more than the grade that you get. In the large scheme of things, grades don't matter.
Now when I go home, I tell my parents that they do not matter.
Doesn't mean that you don't strive for it, right? You are putting in your best. You are on this learning journey, right? Why are you getting a grade? It's an evaluative measure to know where you stand and what are you going to do with the grade that you have got. If you've got a 5, how are you going to work towards getting a 6, right? What are you going to do there, right? So, yeah.
Miss, so about the literature we're taught in school right now, like we're doing Persepolis and we did Othello. So would you change some literature to make it a much more diverse collection of books which we're reading?
I would. There are a lot of options that we can throw in the mix, but because we have a a lot of factors to consider in terms of IB requirements and complexities, right? And we also want to look at how the texts come together. For example, if you're looking at Persepolis, we're looking at paper 2. So we want to look at an appropriate text that you can compare and contrast with, which has similar or different themes, right? So in terms of the complexities or the text pairings, this is what we have come up with.
Miss, so now you tell us your pick, Persepolis or Othello? Anyone?
I think I would go for Othello for the plot.
Othello for the plot.
Yeah.
Okay, have you watched the movie?
Othello?
Yeah, the play, yeah, the performance.
Othello for the plot, because while it's tragic, it's also entertaining.
Yes, it is. It can be funny sometimes as well. So yes.
So, Miss, what's your favorite Shakespeare book? I'm sure you must have read multiple. So,
I think, should I say cliche, Romeo and Juliet? Yeah.
Okay, now to the last part, school-oriented questions. Something that would help the students. What do you think explains why so many students struggle with IB English? At least I do. Why?
IB English. I think it's because students are unable to break down the rubric with that level of nuance and perceptiveness that's required. Most students, ask yourself, do you actually go to the English rubric and look at the requirements of an IO task? You don't, right? So you don't really take the time to, even if you do, you don't know what that means because you've not looked at it enough. You've not broken it down. Apart from that, most students like you, Devansh, would not read the entire book. They would just go to lit charts and get a summary. I think just doing the basics of bare minimum of reading, understanding, being a part of class discussions. A lot of students come to English class and feel like, oh, it's English, we'll manage. And so as a result, even the class discussions are watered down. They don't really participate. And all of this impacts their overall performance.
So, but in IBDP, in the 12th grade, I was just having just 5 minutes. I was just having a conversation with Arjun before this, and he said everyone's sleep schedule is very messed up. So, how are students supposed to manage TOK, CAS, other subjects, and then also find time to read a book as well? And there are not a lot of readers.
Yeah.
Some people just like to watch the movie and just let it go.
Yeah, so the problem is that the movie would be a great way to educate yourself, but it may not be accurate to the book that you're reading because it's an adaptation of the book. It's adapted essentially. So how do you find the time? Guys, you get Diwali break, you get summer break, take the time to read. I always tell my grade 11 students, you have your summer break, you're coming into grade 12, why don't you read this book in advance so that you have,
Miss, what, like now we have our IOs coming up, final IOs. So what's some tip you'd give like
16
students to
days
prepare
more.
for IO?
16 days and we have our IOs. Any tip you want to give the students?
I think consistent practice.
Okay.
By practice, I don't mean rehearsal. Rehearsing your script, no scripts. By practice, I really mean that having clarity of your ideas, looking at the rubric and seeing, here are my points, am I meeting the requirements? Being more mindful and smart in studying rather than rote learning, because essentially when students land up rote learning the IO script, that's when they land up faltering and they don't get, because at that moment when you are recording and during your final IO in front of the teacher, one movement the teacher makes can distract you, and that can disrupt your chain of thoughts. And if you rote learn the whole thing, you've forgotten the whole thing, and then you don't know, you'll become like you don't know what to say. So essentially knowing your points well rather than rote learning, doing enough practice would be something I would recommend, and opening the actual rubric and seeing the requirements of the task.
So I think we're out of time, but this is outside the classroom tradition. We always ask the teacher to look at the camera and give one piece of advice to all the students or to anyone in life. What is some motto you go by? Any piece of advice?
I would say just be yourself. Trust yourself, who you are. Just be yourself. Don't be bogged down by the pressure around you. I think it's very easy to get swayed by everything that's out there. Just being true to yourself and knowing who you really are and taking time to find yourself. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was really amazing. Thank you so much.